September 12, 1942. The South Atlantic Ocean, 250 miles northeast of Ascension Island. A British troopship called RMS Laconia is sailing from Cape Town to England. On board are 2,732 souls. British crew, Polish guards, women and children, wounded soldiers, and 1,800 Italian prisoners of war. At 8:10 p.m., 2 torpedoes strike the ship. They are fired by U-156, a German submarine commanded by Korvettenkapitän Werner Hartenstein. Within minutes, Laconia is sinking. Over 2,000 people are in the water, screaming, drowning, dying. Hartenstein surfaces his submarine to inspect the damage, and he hears something that changes everything. Italian voices, cries for help in Italian. His allies, Axis partners, are drowning because of him. What happens next will lead to one of the most controversial incidents of World War II. A German U-boat captain will try to save everyone, friend and enemy alike. He will broadcast on open channels, inviting Allied ships to help. He will fly Red Cross flags. He will gather survivors onto his submarine and tow lifeboats towards safety. And then, while conducting this rescue, while saving lives under a Red Cross flag, an American B-24 bomber will attack him, will kill dozens of survivors, will force him to abandon the rescue. This is the Laconia Incident, the story of mercy bombed, of humanity attacked, of how one afternoon changed the rules of submarine warfare forever, and of how war can turn heroes into criminals and criminals into heroes. To understand this story, we must first understand the ship and the submarine. RMS Laconia was a Cunard ocean liner, 600 feet long, 20,000 tons. Built in 1921 for luxury transatlantic service. She could carry 2,200 passengers in comfort, first-class cabins, dining rooms, lounges, everything a wealthy traveler could want. But when World War II began, Laconia was converted into a troopship. Her elegant staterooms became troop quarters. Her ballroom became a mess hall. Deck guns were mounted, depth charges added, ASDIC sonar equipment installed. She was now an armed merchant cruiser, a legitimate military target under the laws of war. U-156 was a Type IXC submarine, one of the most effective U-boats in the Kriegsmarine. Launched in 1941, 251 feet long, crew of 48, armed with torpedoes and deck guns. Her captain was Werner Hartenstein, age 35, a professional naval officer, highly decorated, highly skilled. By September 1942, he had already sunk or damaged 21 ships, totaling 116,000 tons. He was one of the most successful U-boat commanders in the Atlantic. He was also, by all accounts, a decent man, a professional who followed the rules of war, who believed in honor even in combat. He was about to face an impossible situation that would test every principle he held. In late summer 1942, Laconia sailed to Cape Town, South Africa. She loaded Italian prisoners of war who had been captured in North Africa, 1,800 of them, crowded below decks, guarded by 160 Polish soldiers. Then she loaded wounded British soldiers, 286 of them, men who had been injured fighting in the desert, who needed medical care in England, plus 80 civilians, including women and children, family members of British officials, and a crew of 463. Over 2,700 people on one ship, sailing through waters patrolled by German U-boats. It was September 1942. The Battle of the Atlantic was at its height. German submarines were sinking Allied ships faster than they could be replaced. The waters between Africa and England were a graveyard. On September 12, Laconia was 700 miles from the African coast, 250 miles from Ascension Island, a British-controlled speck in the middle of the ocean. The sea was calm, the night was clear. At 8:10 p.m., U-156 fired 2 torpedoes. Both struck Laconia, on the starboard side. The first hit number 2 hold, where many Italian prisoners were packed. The explosion killed dozens instantly. The second torpedo hit minutes later. Laconia immediately took a heavy list to starboard, began settling by the bow. Captain Rudolph Sharp, who had also been in command when another Cunard liner, Lancastria, was sunk 2 years earlier, tried to maintain order. He ordered the ship abandoned, women and children first, then wounded, then everyone else. But chaos reigned. Over 2,700 people trying to reach lifeboats. Many lifeboats damaged by the explosions. Some capsized when lowered. The Italian prisoners, locked below decks, were trapped. Water was flooding in. Guards tried to unlock the holds, but many keys were lost in the chaos. Hundreds of Italians drowned before they could escape. At 11:23 p.m., just over an hour after being struck, Laconia sank. Over 2,000 people were now in the South Atlantic, in the dark, in waters known for sharks, 700 miles from land. Most would be dead within days if not rescued. Werner Hartenstein surfaced U-156 to survey the result of his attack. This was standard procedure: identify the ship, confirm the sinking, look for important documents or personnel who could provide intelligence. But as U-156 approached the debris field, Hartenstein heard Italian voices, hundreds of them, screaming for help, in Italian. He was horrified. He had torpedoed a ship carrying Italian prisoners, his allies, Axis partners, men fighting on the same side. He had killed hundreds of them. What had seemed like a legitimate military victory now felt like a war crime. Hartenstein made an immediate decision. He would rescue everyone, not just the Italians, everyone. British, Polish, Italian, women, children, enemy and ally alike. It was the right thing to do, the only thing to do. At 1:25 a.m. on September 13th, Hartenstein sent a coded message to U-boat headquarters, to Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of all German submarine forces. The message read, "Sunk by Hartenstein, British Laconia. Unfortunately, with 1,500 Italian POWs. 90 fished out of the water so far. Request orders." Dönitz's response was immediate and extraordinary. He ordered 7 U-boats from a nearby wolf pack to divert to the location. These U-boats had been preparing to attack Cape Town, a major operation. But Dönitz canceled it, ordered them to rescue Laconia survivors instead. He then informed Berlin. Adolf Hitler was furious, ordered the rescue abandoned. But Dönitz ignored him. He believed in the old rules of the sea. You save survivors when you can, even enemy survivors. It was the code of sailors everywhere. U-156 began picking up survivors. Hartenstein's crew pulled exhausted people from the water. Soon the submarine's deck was crowded with over 200 people. More were in lifeboats tied to the submarine. U-156 began towing 4 lifeboats, each packed with survivors. The submarine moved slowly through the water, heading toward the African coast where Vichy French ships could take the survivors. But it would take days to reach safety. At 9:25 a.m. on September 13th, Hartenstein made another extraordinary decision. He broadcast a message in English on international distress frequencies. In the clear, uncoded, so everyone could hear. The message read, "If any ship will assist the shipwrecked Laconia crew, I will not attack her, provided I am not attacked by ship or air force." I picked up 193 men. Position 05 degrees 53 minutes south, 11 degrees 26 minutes west. German submarine. This was unprecedented. A U-boat announcing its position to the enemy, inviting Allied ships to come help, promising not to attack. It violated every principle of submarine warfare. But Hartenstein didn't care. He had over 2,000 people in the water. He needed help. Within hours, 3 more German submarines arrived. U-506, commanded by Erich Werdemann, U-507 under Harro Schacht, and the Italian submarine Capelline. Together, they picked up hundreds more survivors. They towed dozens of lifeboats. They provided water and food, medical care for the wounded. They were conducting the largest submarine rescue operation in naval history. German and Italian submarines saving British, Polish, and Italian personnel. Enemies working together. Because at sea, sailors understood, you save lives when you can. The ocean is enemy enough. Hartenstein took extra precautions. He had his crew construct large Red Cross flags, 4 meters square, made from white bed sheets with red crosses painted on them. He draped them over the deck guns, making it clear U-156 was on a humanitarian mission, not a combat operation. Under international law, vessels displaying Red Cross flags during rescue operations were not to be attacked. It was one of the fundamental rules of war, protecting medical personnel and rescue workers. Hartenstein believed these rules would protect him. He was wrong. On September 16th, 4 days after the sinking, the rescue convoy was still moving slowly toward Africa. U-156 had over 100 survivors on board. Hundreds more and towed lifeboats. The submarine was barely submerged, moving at just a few knots. The Red Cross flags were clearly visible. At 11:25 a.m., an American B-24 Liberator bomber appeared. It was operating from a secret American base on Ascension Island. The pilot, Lieutenant James D. Hardin, had been on a routine patrol when he spotted the submarines. He circled low, could clearly see the Red Cross flags, could see hundreds of people on the submarine decks and in lifeboats, could see this was a rescue operation. He radioed his base, reported what he saw, asked for instructions. The base commander was Captain Robert C. Richardson III. Later he would become a general, but in September 1942 he was just a captain making a decision. Richardson ordered Hardin to attack, sink the sub. That was the order. Clear, direct, no ambiguity. Hardin protested. There were survivors, Red Cross flags, a rescue in progress. But Richardson insisted. The order stood. Sink the submarine. Hardin returned to U-156. He made several passes. Hartenstein saw him coming, couldn't believe what was happening. This was a rescue, under Red Cross flags. International law protected them. But the B-24 wasn't turning away. It was lining up for an attack run. Hardin dropped bombs and strafed with machine guns. His first run killed dozens of survivors. People on the submarine deck and in the lifeboats. British survivors, Italian prisoners, Polish guards. The very people the submarine was trying to save. Hartenstein had no choice. He cut the tow lines, ordered everyone off the deck, crash dived. U-156 submerged, abandoning the remaining survivors, leaving them in lifeboats and in the water. The American bomber made several more passes, attacking the other submarines and the lifeboats. U-506 was also forced to dive. More survivors were killed by American bombs and bullets. The rescue operation was over. The Germans had left. The survivors were alone again. This time with fewer lifeboats, less food, less water, and the knowledge that even mercy could be attacked. The aftermath was tragic. Vichy French ships eventually arrived. They picked up about 1,000 survivors. But over 1,600 people died. Mostly Italian prisoners who had been trapped below decks or died in the water before rescue arrived. Some British and Polish personnel also died, including some who were killed by the American attack. One lifeboat, carrying 51 survivors, drifted for 39 days before being found. Only 4 survived. The others died of thirst, exposure, and despair. Tony Large, a 19-year-old British sailor, was one of the 4 survivors. He later wrote about the experience, about watching friends give up, drink seawater, go mad, die, about how close they came to rescue ships that sailed past without seeing them, about the crushing despair of near misses. Werner Hartenstein was devastated.
He had tried to do the right thing, had risked his submarine and crew to save lives, had been attacked for his mercy. He continued his patrol, continued fighting. In March 1943, 6 months after the Laconia incident, U-156 was sunk with all hands by American aircraft in the Caribbean. Hartenstein died at age 35. He was a war hero to Germany, a villain to the Allies, and a man who tried to save lives even when it cost him. Admiral Karl Donitz was furious about the American attack. On September 17, 1942, 5 days after Laconia sank, he issued what became known as the Laconia Order. It read, "All attempts to rescue survivors of sunken ships, including picking up persons in the water and putting them in lifeboats, righting capsized lifeboats, and handing over food and water, must cease. Rescue attempts contradict the primary demands of warfare for the destruction of enemy ships and their crews." The order changed submarine warfare. Before Laconia, U-boats routinely helped survivors, gave them water, food, directions to land, sometimes towed lifeboats toward shipping lanes. After Laconia, they were forbidden from doing any of this. Survivors were left to die. The seas became more brutal, more merciless, all because mercy had been attacked. After World War II ended, the Allies put Nazi leaders on trial at Nuremberg. Admiral Donitz was charged with war crimes. One of the main charges was issuing the Laconia Order. The prosecution argued it was proof of German inhumanity, evidence that the Nazis had no regard for human life. But Donitz's defense was simple. He showed what had happened during the Laconia Incident. A U-boat conducting a humanitarian rescue under Red Cross flags had been attacked by Allied aircraft. Survivors had been killed. Submarines had been nearly destroyed. The Laconia Order was issued to protect German submarines, not to be cruel, but to prevent them from being attacked during rescues. Then Donitz played his trump card. He called Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz as a witness. Nimitz had been commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet during the war. Donitz asked him a simple question. Did American submarines conduct unrestricted submarine warfare against Japan? Did they rescue survivors after attacks? Nimitz's answer was honest. No.
American submarines did not rescue enemy survivors. They followed orders similar to the Laconia Order. From the first day America entered the war, the Americans had done exactly what they were prosecuting Donitz for doing. The prosecution was embarrassed. The tribunal was uncomfortable. How could they convict Donitz for something the Americans had also done? In the end, Donitz was convicted, but not for the Laconia Order. The tribunal decided that while the order was harsh, it was not technically a war crime, not when the Allies had done the same thing. Donitz was sentenced to 10 years in prison for other crimes, mainly for supporting the Nazi regime. He served his full sentence and was released in 1956. He lived until 1980, dying at age 89. He never apologized for the Laconia Order, believed he had been right to issue it, that it had saved German lives even if it cost Allied lives. Captain Robert Richardson, the American officer who ordered the attack on U-156, was never charged with any crime, never faced any investigation, never had to explain why he ordered an attack on a rescue operation flying Red Cross flags. He went on to have a successful military career, became a general, served in NATO, retired with honors. In 1963, researchers finally tracked down the crew of the B-24 that had attacked U-156, asked them about that day. The pilot, James Harden, defended his actions, said he was following orders, said he didn't know the full situation, said he believed the Red Cross flags were a trick, that the Germans were only rescuing Italian prisoners, not British survivors. But photographs and survivor testimony proved otherwise. Hartenstein had been rescuing everyone. The attack had killed the very people it supposedly protected. The Laconia incident raises uncomfortable questions. Who was the villain? Hartenstein, who torpedoed a ship carrying prisoners? Or Richardson, who attacked a rescue operation? Or the system that put both men in impossible situations? War is not simple. Heroes and villains are not clear-cut. Hartenstein killed hundreds by torpedoing Laconia, but he tried to save thousands afterward. Richardson killed dozens by bombing a rescue, but he believed he was attacking an enemy submarine. Both men thought they were doing their duty. Both caused deaths. Both can be called murderers. Both can be called patriots. The incident also exposed the hypocrisy of the Nuremberg trials. The Allies prosecuted Germans for actions the Allies themselves had taken. American submarines in the Pacific showed no mercy to Japanese survivors. British bombers killed German civilians by the hundreds of thousands. Soviet armies raped and murdered across Eastern Europe. Yet only Germans stood trial. Only Germans were convicted. The winners write history. The losers face justice. This is not fair, but it is how war works. For the survivors of Laconia, the incident was a nightmare that never ended. Those who were rescued by the French spent the rest of the war in camps. Some were repatriated. Others died from disease and malnutrition. Tony Large, who survived 39 days in a lifeboat, returned to England. He served the rest of the war in the Royal Navy. Afterward, he struggled with what today we call PTSD, nightmares, flashbacks, survivor's guilt. He wrote a book about his experience decades later, trying to make sense of what happened, trying to understand how he survived when so many others died. The Italian prisoners who survived Laconia mostly died in other ways. Some drowned when Vichy French ships transporting them were themselves torpedoed. Some died in camps. Few made it home to Italy. They had survived the sinking, survived the water, survived the attack, only to die later from other causes. War is cruel in ways that compound and multiply. The Laconia incident changed naval warfare forever. After September 1942, submarine captains on both sides stopped helping survivors. The gentleman's rules of the sea died with Laconia. Survivors were left to drown. Lifeboats were ignored. Humanity became a luxury no one could afford. The ocean, already cruel, became crueler still. Some historians argue this was inevitable, that total war requires total ruthlessness, that you cannot fight modern industrial warfare with chivalric rules. Others argue that losing our humanity, even in war, means the enemy has already won, that becoming monsters to fight monsters leaves only monsters. Werner Hartenstein tried to save lives. He was attacked for it. He died believing he had done the right thing. Maybe he did. Maybe trying to save people is always right, regardless of context. Or maybe he was naive. Maybe in war, mercy is a luxury that gets you killed. These are questions without answers, but they are questions worth asking. Today, a memorial plaque in Germany honors Werner Hartenstein. It calls him a humanitarian, a man who tried to do right in impossible circumstances. In Britain, survivors have mixed feelings about him. He killed their friends by torpedoing Laconia, but he tried to save them afterward. How do you feel about a man who almost kills you, then tries to save you, then abandon you when attacked? It's complicated. War is always complicated. The Laconia incident reminds us that history is not simple, that heroes can be villains, that villains can be heroes, that mercy can be punished, that cruelty can be rewarded, and that the rules we think govern war are often just illusions. The only real rule is survival, and sometimes not even that. The story of Laconia is a story about humanity in inhumane circumstances, about trying to do right when everything is wrong, about how war corrupts everything it touches, even mercy, even honor, even the instinct to save a drowning person. The Atlantic Ocean holds many secrets, many ships, many bodies.
But few stories are as tragic or as complicated as the Laconia Incident. The sinking where everyone was wrong and everyone was right, where mercy was bombed and cruelty became policy, where 1,600 people died, not just from torpedoes, but from the death of hope, the death of rules, the death of the idea that even in war some things are sacred. After Laconia, nothing was sacred. Only survival mattered, and the ocean became a graveyard without mercy. This is the Laconia Incident. May we never forget, and may we always remember, in war there are no winners, only survivors, and those who die trying to do the right thing.